All right, hey everybody. So I've been getting a bunch of questions from people about things they want tips and advice on, and the one thing that's been the most common, and I guess it kind of makes sense, is how to prepare for exams, how to deal with the stress, how to focus on studying, and it makes sense because I guess December finals are coming up for a lot of you. I know not all of you are in school right now. Maybe some of you are in high school, some of you are in undergrad or some kind of professional school. Some of you may be working. So I'm going to try to keep the advice pretty general, but you can apply it to whatever stage of life you're at because it served me well. And I think it's the reason for a lot of my success. So I'm going to try to leave you guys Instagram stories on these topics every night or every other night whenever I get some time to drop a couple minutes. So the first thing I'm going to say about this stuff is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's a quote. One of my coaches gave that to me, but it's very true. I mean, really, if you don't have a plan, yeah, things might still work out. But if you do have a plan, there's a much higher chance of things working out. And if you get thrown a curveball by life, which often happens, I'm sure you've experienced that before, you'll be better prepared to deal with that and think on the fly. So, what I would say is if you have finals coming up, create like a study plan. You'll see people that they take caffeine pills, they cram, they do all nighters. Those aren't good habits to build, and you really want to start building some good habits. And one of them is to always plan on whatever scale it is, whether it's you're planning out what you're going to do the next day. I plan out what I'm doing every hour pretty much, or at least different blocks of hours for the following day before that day actually starts. I plan out what I'm going to eat, when I'm going to eat, roughly at least, so I have an idea, so I can have like a good routine and have a good productive day. So you can plan things out on that scale. You can plan things out on the scale of like, where do you want to be 5-10 years from now, and then create a plan by working backwards, like I mentioned in the delivery video. And then for things that are sort of in the middle, like something a few weeks away like exams, create a plan. So if you know the date of a final for a certain subject, walk backwards from that time, see how much time you have left between now and then, and divide it up into sort of phases. Like for me, my general rule of thumb, it was kind of arbitrary, but for every final that I had, I would start studying 3 weeks before. For any midterm that I had, I would start studying 10 days before. And it worked. I mean, that was enough time. So for a midterm, I would basically review and try to internalize all the material so well that like I really knew it like the back of my hand, so that the last 3 days, so after about a week had passed, the last 3 days before the exam, all I was doing was just reviewing things that I had trouble remembering, like little things I had trouble memorizing or certain concepts I had difficulty with. I would just go over my study notes, all the diagrams I'd made, flow charts, tables, and things like that to help me remember stuff, to help me understand the material. And that way, and I would do the same thing with finals, except for on a longer time scale over 3 weeks because it was more material, right? So that worked for me, and I never had to pull all-nighters. I never really had to stress, never had to take caffeine pills or anything like that to get through exams. I didn't even drink coffee back then, to be honest, and it was just because I started a bit more in advance and I had a plan and I followed it and I executed. Because I'll tell you, there are some exams that'll come along, whether it's the MCAT or like for me, it was like a big biochem exam that will make or break you, and they will throw questions at you the type of which you have never seen before, and you have to know the material so well that you have to think on the fly and sort of synthesize an answer and figure things out that you've never actually done before in class, never seen a question like that before, and you will need to do well because that is what will separate the people that are successful in those courses and those exams from the people that are not, or not as successful, I should say. And that is often the difference between being successful in whatever career you're going into or whatever you're planning is that preparation, right? Like whatever planning and preparation you put into it might be the difference between your performance exceeding someone else's performance, and that might be the reason why you get into whatever career, whether it's a professional school or a business that succeeds. You must always plan, in my opinion, and like there's a famous saying that goes, fortune favors the prepared mind. I think that's roughly the saying, but it's all the same stuff, right? Like if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. It's the same idea, and I really encourage you guys to do that. So I'll leave a bit more on some related topics about stress and stuff like that a bit later this week, but I hope that helps you guys for now. All right, guys, one thing I actually almost forgot, and it's super important, is create a cheat sheet. So as you're studying, you'll realize, okay, there are certain things you have difficulty understanding, things that you have difficulty memorizing. Make little notes, like tiny notes on one sheet of paper, on both sides of one sheet of paper, and just, keep adding to that as you go through the next few days, the next couple of weeks before your exam. That way, when you're kind of a day or two before the exam, you have everything important kind of internalized and hopefully memorized if that's an important part of your course. And then the things that you have trouble with are just going to be on the front and back of this one sheet of paper. And then you just kind of review that over and over again. And it allows you to go over the things that you have difficulty remembering and learning very quickly over and over again towards the end, so that you just, by sheer repetition, you will get that stuff accomplished and learned and memorized, if that's something that you need to do for your course. So that cheat sheet, in addition to all my diagrams and lists and all that kind of stuff, was key to kind of creating a condensed form of all the knowledge that I have to be ready for that exam. And it would help me be very efficient with my time, especially towards the end when it's crunch time and you don't have time to even really go over all your notes anymore. You just have to kind of drill in all the stuff that you've maybe not completely memorized yet or fully learned yet. All right, guys, so there's actually two things that I forgot to mention in the video. One of those things is pretty simple. It's just, as you go along your course, like I said, you want to be making diagrams, tables, notes, about whatever you're reading in your textbooks. So you don't have to go back and review entire textbooks when you get to the time you have to study for your exams. And now that you guys are here and you're getting ready for your exams, even during the, 2-3 weeks or whatever before each final, or however much time you have left, as you go through your notes, as you're trying to review everything, you're going to notice things that you struggle with, things that you have difficulty memorizing, for instance, right? This is pretty useful for memorizing memorization type courses. So what you want to do is create a cheat sheet. Just one page. It can be just one side or both sides if you need to, and use multicolored pens. If that helps you, that used to be helpful for me. And I would, on that sheet, write down all the stuff that I was struggling to remember. If it was a tough concept, I would put some kind of little diagram on it that would help me remember that concept, help me understand that concept, and I would collect this all into one cheat sheet, so that even when I got to the last 1, 2, 3 days before the actual final, I wouldn't even need to be going through all of my notes, because there's no point in reviewing stuff that I've already learned, the 90% of the material that I've already learned. At that point, if there's little things left over that I haven't quite memorized, basically, or completely understood, I just have to put the finishing touches on those things. And that's where you can go over this cheat sheet multiple times, over and over and over again, during the time that you've blocked off for studying for that particular final. And that'll help you put the polish on your knowledge and your understanding towards the end, so that you're basically going into the exam as prepared as possible. And also, sort of these strategies that I'm mentioning about dealing with exam stress apply to other sources of stress in your life too. You just have to generalize it to other things. So if there's things about you, problems that you have, you don't want to leave them to the end, because they're going to start to pile up, and there's going to you're going to have a crisis in your life at some point when all your problems kind of get exacerbated all at the same time. So if you've got something you got to work on, whether it's your fitness, your education, your career, your relationships with family, friends, deal with them right away as soon as you can. Pick up the phone, call that person that you're having difficulty dealing with. Don't procrastinate. These are all things that you want to do. You want to kind of prioritize the most important things, the most critical things. Even when I was deciding what video topics to do, I would love to give you guys more sort of general life advice, but I realized the best way that I can create benefit for others is to address the more acute issue right now, which is of you guys going into your exams right now. General life advice can wait 2 or 3 weeks, or whenever I get through these topics that relate to exams. So you just remember, you can take these strategies and apply it to pretty much anything, and it should help you. All right. Hope that's helpful. If you guys have any feedback for me, just DM me, and I will try to take that into account next time. All right. Good luck, guys.